Kia ora e te iwi and welcome to The Chew. Coming at you from the Pūrako studio here at Te Atameta, Queenstown, New Zealand. Ko Arrowtown Dad tēnei, and today we are chewing the fat with Kyle Pauro. Kia ora, Kyle.
Kia ora, brother.
Hey.
Thank you for having me.
That's all right. Good to see you. Good to meet you. So we'll kick things off by asking you to introduce yourself, and then we'll have a bit of a chat about your upbringing and where you come from.
Nice. Yeah, my name's Kyle Pauro. So I live in the Queenstown region, and I'm the founder of a company called Holistic Performance, where we specialise in holistic modalities, allowing people to better understand that they are their own healers.
Great, fantastic. And so where were you born and raised, I guess?
Yeah, mother was Pākehā, father was Māori, and I was born in Australia, Western Australia, in Perth.
Right.
Yeah, and spent about the first 6 years of my life in Perth, and came over to Tokoroa when I was 6-7 years old. Spent a year or two there. Mum and dad separated, and then mum moved down with us boys down to Christchurch, Ōtautahi, so where we spent a fair chunk of our lives right up until about 6 years ago, until I moved into Tahuna.
Okay, so you're born in Australia, and what age did you say you came across to Tokoroa?
About 6 years old.
6 years old, yep.
Yeah.
And how much schooling did you do in Tokoroa while you were there?
I think it was about a year or two.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was about a year or two in Tokoroa. I moved around a few different schools. Part of my childhood growing up is I struggled to fit in.
Yeah,
so,
right.
With that came bullying and stuff like that and growing up. So I didn't feel like I fitted in the Pākehā. The groups and didn't fit in the Māori either. So I felt in between that, which was really difficult to understand. And I just struggled.
Yeah, right. So the majority of your schooling was in Christchurch?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And whereabouts in Christchurch? Did you sort of stay in one area of Christchurch, or did you move around to all?
Predominantly, it was in the Hūnei-Hawesville environment in Christchurch. So predominantly, where would that be? West, I suppose, of the central CBD.
Yep.
And my mother and stepfather still live there, and my children live in the north part of Christchurch. So I still get up there every fortnight, every month to see them and catch up with whānau and that.
Christchurch is pretty close to my heart as well. I spent probably about 10 years there.
Yeah.
So, but this is about you, bro. So speaking of childhood, so how was your childhood growing up in Christchurch?
Yeah, Christchurch was fine. I mean, taking you back to probably my early childhood, because we were moving around a bit, I struggled to really feel grounded. Yeah. And, my earliest memory of my childhood with my father was a difficult environment. Yep. He came from the gangs. He was associated with the Highway 61 back in Christchurch. Right. During their inception and I suppose during their heights of a lot of the riffraff in the late 70s, early 80s. He went to prison. At that time, my oldest brother was born, and I think when he got out of prison, he decided at that point that he was going to leave the area and to head over to Australia, as far as away from the gang scene as he could. Ironically, all the gangs he was, against and in cahoots with, ended up being his drinking buddies in the shearing sheds over in Australia.
Really?
So all the gangs sort of, because they're Kiwis, just bound together over there in the sheds, and they just became drinking buddies. But a lot of them suffered their own trauma as children, I think, and that's where alcohol was involved. And so a lot of my childhood growing up and memories of the example of Māori in my life was my father, and us boys didn't really have a ton of respect for our father and the way that he carried himself and the way that he just functioned in the family unit. Yeah. He was never happy unless he had a bottle in his hand, and there was a fine line between happiness and then too much, and then the violence would come in. So being the youngest of three brothers and growing up, I was super, super sensitive, and that was a real tough environment to be in growing up. Yeah, right. And understanding where I fit in the family unit, but it even felt bigger than that, like where I fitted in the world. Yep. And this was carried right through to my adolescent years into my early 20s, and I really haven't found my true self not until up until about 5 years ago. That's really how long it's been.
Really?
And unpacking a lot of this trauma and a lot of this, I suppose, deeper understanding of self.
Right.
And it's been holistic modalities that have really cracked me open with that. So childhood was a big thing. A lot of what I suffered as a child I carried through my life.
Yep.
And making poor decisions in relationships and how I functioned in relationships. Just struggling to really understand myself. And the outlet that I had growing up was actually rugby league.
Right.
And so I felt like if it wasn't for that anchoring me and giving me something to have an outlet with and pursue, and where I feel like I fitted in,
right?
Because, you're getting all these accolades and, people are sort of looking at you like, man,
you're the man.
You're the man. So it felt good internally for me. But when that career ended, because I went to pursue an NRL career, where I was contracted to the Canberra Raiders.
Really?
And not long after that, there was a sliding door moment in between contracts, and sort of left that to go to a full commission sales job. But ultimately, once I left that, I actually didn't realise at the time, but looking back, it was actually a real struggle because a lot of my identity was wrapped up in rugby league.
Right.
Because that was my outlet.
Yeah.
I fabricated, I suppose, in my own mind and other people's opinions of who I was with rugby league. Once that career ended, all of a sudden I felt like I actually lost myself.
Wow.
Because now that part of myself has ended. And I didn't know it at the time, but you sort of, I think you are subconsciously aware of it, but consciously I wasn't. And so I was unhappy. And, you lean into drugs, you lean into alcohol, and you lean into things to try and numb this confusion or this pain.
Yeah.
But in hindsight on my journey, in the last 5 years and doing a lot of inward work, you start to uncover why you were leaning into these substances to try and numb the pain and why you're trying to escape that. And a lot of it actually stemmed from my childhood.
Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
of course. So that, I've heard that story a couple of times before, actually, where people who have lived and breathed a particular sport, like league's always a really good example, and when it's time to step away from that, some people get lost because they've never known anything else and they feel like there's something missing. You were talking about that was quite it just brought back a conversations I've had with other people around that same thing as well. So now, would you say you were brought up in any way traditional Māori with any of those traditional elements?
No, and the reason being is because my father's upbringing was hugely dysfunctional as well. So he was just a product of his upbringing. And then, at the time when you're going through it, you're only sort of thinking about what you lack in your childhood.
Right.
But it's in hindsight now, looking so far back, with all the years I've lived up to this point.
Yeah.
And that I've let a lot of the anger and the frustration go of how my father was, because ultimately he was just merely a product of his own upbringing as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so was his father, and so was his father, and so on. And this is how it goes. This is what intergenerational trauma is.
Yeah.
It's just handed down until somebody recognises it. The first stages is just being aware of it.
Yeah.
The second phase is taking action, and that's the biggest part. But being aware of it was huge for me because it allowed me to see a broader and bigger perspective of what it is that he was going through and what it is I went through.
Yep.
But being aware of it's huge because then we can start to make a change.
Yeah, right.
In that.
So on that, with the intergenerational thing, did you find that you were following your dad's footsteps?
Yeah, there was an element of that. I think there was because I was the youngest of two brothers, I was super observant. So I was able to see a lot of pitfalls by their example, right? So that was, I suppose, a blessing for me as being the youngest, as much as there's it has its different dynamics being where you are on the in the sibling container. But for me being the youngest, I was super observant, and I think my middle brother was very much the carbon copy of my father.
Really?
And it makes sense now why they didn't get along, because they were so very similar.
Yep.
And so, same as my father, my middle brother went through, his difficulties with drug addiction, alcohol, and, really suffered internally as well, the lack of love.
Yep.
not having that strong father figure in his life, and also dealing with the intergenerational trauma on what cycle he had to break from, our father and his father, that he also went to prison as well, my brother. And, he's got a wild story, but, fast forward to now, all of us three brothers are all doing work in the holistic field.
Really?
All doing very big work in our communities and growing and doing the deep healing too of ourselves and our lineage before us.
That's fantastic. So you all feel that you've all broken that cycle now?
Yeah, I think it's a forever journey,
of course.
But we are definitely on the right track to breaking the mold, for ourselves and for our children as well.
Yeah.
Because we don't realise the impact we have on doing the internal work.
Yeah.
It's not just us. It's actually, we're healing lineages before us, ancestors before us, and we're healing the future generations coming through as well. So us three brothers just living in different parts of the world and all on the same path now is just
that's crazy.
Super grateful and honoured for that. But all different challenges, we've faced our different challenges as well and gone through that, and now in a better position to be able to help others, because the very first thing we started to do was help ourselves.
Great, that's fantastic. And so I'm going to make a connection here, even if it's not there. But I'm interested to know your thoughts on this. So your movement into the holistic space, how is that connected to? Is it at all connected to your culture and something? And where does the culture sit within your identity these days?
Yeah, it's something that's growing and building for me. Like I mentioned, that my example of Māori wasn't a very good one, because that was my father.
Yes.
So, and for him, he didn't have a lot of respect for his Māori connection, because that was his upbringing, in that really dysfunctional environment.
Yep.
So, what I do remember vividly is that he felt at his most comfortable and his best in his life, or at his most happiest, was when he was connected to, because my iwi is Te Atahonu o Paparangi, located up at Whanganui.
Kia ora, Taika, shout out to you, the kazi. Yep.
Beautiful, yeah. And I just find the land and the landscape there just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And when my father was going through his difficulties as a young fella, he had some really awesome uncles that took him under their wing.
Wow.
And took him into the kiwi fruit picking fields up at Whanganui, and just got him connected in with nature.
Wow.
So it was when he was connected in with the land and working off the land and away from all this, this toxic environment, that he was able to truly feel connected. And so that was something that resonated with me after the fact, after we'd gone through so much.
Sure.
But that was one key thing that when Dad felt like, I suppose, he was connected to his whenua and connected to real love, and connected to the land, is when he felt is his happiest. So.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And so you obviously had a journey of healing that you had to go through. Mm-hmm. And so what avenues helped you in that journey? Did you look for support through the health system, through other avenues, or was it like, did you feel like it was a lone journey into that healing?
It was very much a lone journey,
really,
to be honest. And it was something that, and this happens in life, I've realised sometimes we need a big shake-up in order to change things internally. It's like we're kind of given from Spirit, from Wairua, so many messages all the time, but it's drowned out by our own active mind, know. And I think when we used to live off the land, we were very much connected in with Papatū and Ranganui all the time. So we didn't need breath work, we didn't need meditation, because we were already in flow with nature and connected to nature, that it just was innately in us, And I think this is where we're heading in society today. Right. This is why the holistic modalities, a lot more people are feeding into this, because it feels more connected to their wairoa to be able to do that. So for me, I had to hit rock bottom, and my rock bottom was 6 years ago. And that was when I went through a divorce, a bankruptcy, a failed business, separation from my children, isolation away from my support structure, and then just spiraling, trying to numb that pain as well. That was 6 years ago. And that was a really difficult time, but it was something that I had to go through in order to rebuild my life, but to really go inwards too. So I just newly moved down to Queenstown at the time, and in that moment went through a divorce and separation, and the business that I had at the time was failing, and I had to close the doors on that, and then had to file for bankruptcy as well. So that to me was a huge, massive life change.
Absolutely,
and that rebuilding, I didn't realise at the time what that would mean to me. But I had some spiritual experiences in that time, so I never grew up with any real spirituality, but I had some tangible spiritual experiences that were just hard to deny, I suppose, because they were becoming so vivid in my life.
Right.
And it's probably bigger than what time we've got to be able to explain, but the briefest version is that I started having things happening in my home, and they were connected to my children's home as well, where they lived in Christchurch at the time. And the land that they were living on is Pegasus.
Yeah, I know.
And I know a lot of
Pegasus.
Māori speak about that as being tapu land. And I know some Māori as well don't feel comfortable going
out there, yeah.
And what I've found about the history of that is that it is an old burial ground of some big trauma that's happened up there, and some, and the land has got a lot of residual energy connected to it that's unsettled.
Right.
And so that mixed with the negative environment that was created between the separation of my ex and myself was like a magnet to, I suppose you could call it, darker energies.
Yep.
And these started to play out in my home and their home as well. So my youngest children used to wake up, and they used to, my ex at the time thought they were just crying, and so she would let them cry. And it wasn't until I got some assistance around a spiritual medium, and this lady had picked up on some things and stopped my mother in the street and said, one of your sons is wearing a tonga, a pounamu, and he needs to take it off because it's been incorrectly gifted to him. And I remember vividly at the time when it was gifted to me, and someone said, you need to get that blessed or something. And at the time I didn't have no connection with the Māori side. And I said, oh man, that's full of,
I know.
You know what?
Yeah.
So, but it played out that I found it one day after I'd separated, and I was going through a bit of a funk, and I put on the pounamu thinking it was protecting me. But because it was incorrectly given to me, it was acting like a magnet.
Of course.
And an amplification of these, I suppose, negative energies that were floating around. Wow. So to me, when that lady had reached out to my mother that didn't know my mother, I started to look down that avenue. So I had a reading with her, and she started to validate things that were happening in my home, things that were happening in my children's home. And, and she said that the reason why your children are waking and crying is not because, they're being naughty or anything like that. Yeah. It's because people are in their room. And so, and this is where it started to really crack open, I suppose, the spiritual side of this connection for me. And that's the briefest version of what got me into, I suppose, peeling back the layers of my own spiritual connection.
And so this everything you just described then, that was before the rock bottom piece?
That was during.
That was during. Right.
So it was like the rock bottom came, all of this came in, these experiences started happening where I'd wake up early hours of the morning, would hear things in my home. And ultimately, it was connected very much to what was going on in my life.
Right.
But that was also the linchpin that I started to go, there's something beyond the physical for me, and I need to have a look into what that is. And so I got into psychic mediumship. I got trained in that. And, I was still dealing with my own difficulties in life, but that was something that I really felt resonated with me.
Right.
So I got trained in being a psychic medium, and then found sound healing, and then breath work.
Wow.
And breath work was simply like pouring gasoline onto an already burning fire. And then that's been the last 5 years for me. So I've fast-tracked myself into this, and for me, I've just started to see so much benefits in healing. My wider world. I'm
interested about your description just then that breath work is like pouring gas on a fire. Yeah. So what do you mean by that?
So breath work, or taha, is simply like, breath work really simply is breathing with intention and purpose.
Right.
So there's a lot of I suppose discussion around breath work, and a lot more people leaning into this.
Yeah.
On a surface level, breathwork is great for like regulating our nervous system and balancing our emotions.
Right.
It's getting out of the head and into the heart, connecting into this. And why we need to do this in this society is because we are so heady. You know,
absolutely.
we are so heady, and we can see it in the way that people struggle to learn in schools. Technology speeds that up. We're seeing so much fear and so much, I suppose, destruction on mainstream media and that, which is feeding these thoughts. And, you know, on top of all that, people that are leaning into the pharmaceuticals as well is having an effect on, you know, taking them out of their heart and into their head. And so these holistic modalities, in particular breathwork or taha, is our opportunity to self-regulate and self-navigate. And so I teach a modality that really allows us to access the subconscious mind, which is so important for us, because in the subconscious is where all of our vault of knowledge is. You know, it's all of everything was smelt, experienced, lived through, and even consciously and unconsciously, it's all stored here. And it's also where our trauma is, but it's also where all the answers lie and all the deep healing.
Wow.
And so, yeah, this is how powerful breathwork is.
I always wonder, you know, for people like me, if there's a way forward in moving into trying to move into a spiritual realm. I don't know if I have a mental block for it or what, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, we all have the gift, right? And gifts, multiple gifts, right? We all have the ability to connect in with our, you know, our wairoa or our anahira and ancestors and that. Ultimately, it's like a radio frequency. It's just about fine-tuning that and finding that frequency. Now, I suppose, perception of what spirituality is simply what connects you back to your wairoa. And as unique as our fingerprints are to us in the physical form, we have our own spiritual fingerprint, right? Or our own pathways that connect us back to our wairoa.
Right.
And that's why it's not a cookie cutter kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's my sort of take on spirituality.
That
it's
makes
unique
sense.
to you,
Yep.
but this is why these modalities like sound healing and breathwork or taha is so important, because it is an inward journey that allows us to go in, and this is where we start to figure out the answers internally, that we no longer need to look externally for the answers, because the reality is all the answers are within. You know, and we've just lost that connection. So this is all that's doing, is connecting it back and not feeling like we have to, you know, I suppose do stuff that other people do. And this is what I teach. It's like, it's not connected to any religion or any spiritual dogma. Like, ultimately, spirituality is a deep connection with yourself.
Right.
But we only find that when we do the work internally.
You
know, and it's in I have a saying that it's in the silence that we find our inner guidance, you know. But we don't live in an environment that allows us to have a lot of silence.
To have that
so
peace.
This is why these modalities are so important.
Right. So you call them spiritual modalities?
Yeah, because they I mean, ultimately, on the surface level, they're great for like regulating our nervous system, allowing us to sleep better, boosting our immunity. You know, really powerful for that. But if I'm honest, that's the Trojan horse to carry the spiritual nuggets. You know what I mean? But you've got to meet people where they're at as well. And so I've had to fine tune things, and because I deal with a few NRL teams as well. So we do these modalities and cold immersion, like ice therapy and hydrotherapy and stuff like that. So, but yeah, if I'm honest, it's the Trojan horse. It's like, you want to sleep better, perform better on the field, we're going to use this, right?
Right. And that's the easy way to get in there.
Totally. Once they're in there, that's when all the spiritual insight starts connecting for them. They're like, and they start thinking, man, I had my childhood come up, and I realized that the way I've been not performing on the field is actually because it stems from my childhood. So they're self-navigating and they're self-realizing because of this beautiful modality, and all of it is just connected to peeling back the layers of programming and conditioning to make things clearer. So if anything, the blockages are just layers of conditioning, and the analytical mind is an amazing thing, and it serves a purpose. But in connecting deep, we need to be able to build a relationship to say, hey, take a bit of a step aside for now and allow me to just receive whatever comes through in this moment. So,
wow, that's fantastic. That's a lot to take in.
I know, but that can be.
But in a good way, you know, like I would not consider myself to be a religious person. Agnostic, I think, is the term, but it's that whole, you want something to happen, but you're not going to just jump into it blindly, I suppose. So
I think that's great too.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's so important to still have a bit of skepticism,
Yeah.
which I still do in the spiritual community or the hubs that we go into.
Yeah.
You know, even though I've got a pretty good idea of different, you know, techniques and healing modalities and stuff, I still use my own discernment with going into this because I think it's so crucial, you know, and it means that when it does land for us, that it resonates, you know, and it really does sort of have a profound effect on our lives after that. But it's really important to have skepticism, I think.
Yeah, healthy skepticism, right? Or informed skepticism, not just I don't know, necessarily a feeling that something's bad. Maybe there is some... spoke to Julian before this, and there is something to intuition and gut feeling. So, you know, you probably shouldn't throw that out either, you know.
Yeah.
Now, coming back to your business, so Holistic Performance, tell me a little bit about how that started and where you are currently with your business.
Yeah, well, I've been in the trade sector for about 22 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and, you know, on and off a couple of years in between when I went over to Australia to play rugby league, but got qualified before I left and came back, picked it up again as well. And it wasn't until in the last year that I decided to give that up full time and create a business called Holistic Performance and to share these holistic modalities with the mainstream, with the masses, with humanity, because it's helped me heal the fragmented parts of myself, and I feel it's going to, and it has, because of the way it's been received and the way it's expanding. And there's just so many people. You really don't have to promote much of this because people are already looking for it as well. And that's why I just felt the calling to be able to go out into this full time, which was also had its difficulties and fears around, you know, another failed business that I've already had, and that was in a trade that was fully qualified in. But I've realised for this is that the more we let go of the mind and feed into the heart, and it took a lot of internal work to do that it just felt right. And if it feels right when you're connected in that kind of grounded space, then the more you lean in, the more the doors open up for you. So, and this is how abundance has been created in my life and doing this. But I don't do it for that. I do it for serving people on a deeper level. So going to, this might be a tricky question to answer, but I'm going to sort of focus on the Māori aspect for a second. So you as a Māori person, so is there anything within you as Māori that either aids or is a part of this journey towards your ability to do this holistic healing? Yeah, like I feel a deep calling, I suppose, to want to share this with Māori because, you know, my in this lifetime, my DNA very much is connected to Māori. And I feel like so much of the Māori community are really yearning for this. And with my own journey through life, I've felt like there's similarities in all of our story sharing. And so there's some really deep healing that can happen with taha and connecting with our whenua and, sound healing. And in my sound healing as well, is I use taonga pūoro as well. So I've built a strong connection with my whenua and my anahera and even my father who has passed over, who is very much strongly with me in my events and a lot of what I do. And it's just a beautiful journey because, you know, whilst my father in the physical was very absent, I suppose, I probably didn't really have the best things to say about my father. It's proven that we can still mend things even once they're gone and passed over, once we start to build that connection. So I really do love my father on the deepest levels, and I felt like he's done a lot of work for me and my brothers once he's passed over as well. So he's very much connected in, and he's very much brought taonga and pūoro into our lives to share these beautiful modalities. So for me, I feel it's my calling to need to share this with my whānau and share it with other iwi as well, and to be able to connect in on this beautiful waka, this journey together of healing. And so speaking more about your business, so do you, in terms of what your short-term or even long-term goals are for the business, does that sit within this region or is it sort of wider than that? It's already shown it's wider than that. Even connections to LA now.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So we've got some really it's unbelievable what's been built in the background for this business. And I always knew that what I was building wasn't going to have me at the helm.
Right.
It's what I'm going to collaborate and bring in with whānau, with the beautiful souls that are resonating with this with this waka, and getting in and putting their influence and their input into the growth and expansion of this amazing, I suppose, vehicle.
Yeah,
right. That's what it is. It's simply a vehicle to connect us all back to a place of remembrance, because this is nothing new,
Yeah.
We all used to live from the heart in connection with nature, with Papatūānuku and with Ranginui. But we've just lost that.
We've lost it, right.
And it's all the layers of conditioning and programming and trauma that has done that.
Yep.
But this is, this is going to be a real big change, I think, in the landscape of how we speak and how we connect. Yeah, so.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm going to shift focus a little bit here. So this interview is in collaboration with KUMA, the Māori Southern Māori Business Network. Mm-hmm. And so have you had any engagement with either KUMA directly or the groups that work within KUMA?
Yeah. It's recently come up for me this year, the connection with KUMA, and in particular, a beautiful sister who I'll give a shout out. You know who I'm talking about. It's Carmela Rapata. Yeah, beautiful sister, beautiful wairoa, and she does a tremendous amount of work, I believe. In just the short time I've been privy of understanding what she does.
Yeah.
But I think it's beyond that as well. So big shout out to her.
Yeah.
And she's doing amazing work with connecting Māori in and allowing Māori to collaborate as well.
Yeah.
I think that's important on such a human scale, global scale, is collaboration, letting go, dropping our walls and letting go of scarcity and feeling like, we want to be the only sole person that, does what we do. And ultimately, I couldn't think any differently in that I feel like our power of humanity and Māori is unity.
Yeah,
it's connection.
Absolutely.
And in collaboration,
Absolutely.
What I mean? And, with our own mind, we are so powerful, but in collaboration, we're that much more amplified, So I'd love if, we just continue on that journey as well. And I think what KUMA are doing and what the Rapata whānau and all of those beautiful souls in the region are doing is amazing work.
Yeah.
And, I just believe that this is going to be blueprinted and I think mimicked throughout New Zealand with all the iwi and for us coming together.
We do have a good thing going on here, right? It's so fantastic, and we're lucky to be led by people like Carmela, because it takes a bit of effort to keep driving that, to force those connections. We're all convinced ourselves that we're too busy for things, so we're like, I can't do it because I'm too busy. So it's great that people like Carmela are willing to force those connections. She's quite. She'll just keep ringing and ringing until you pick up.
Oh yeah, she's good.
So shout out to you, Carmela. You're doing a fantastic job of connecting us all here. So speaking about connections, you've spoken about connecting with the Rapata whānau. Mm-hmm. Have you managed to connect with many other Māori businesses in this region?
I haven't, but that is a passion of mine, to do that. I have been in discussions with the Ururu Whenua.
Oh, have you?
And a particular role had opened up for doing something there.
Right.
And it resonated with me, but it's also like it's very difficult for me in the position I'm in the expansion and growth of what I do, to be able to do everything well.
Yeah.
But I do have some connections of where I think some people are going to be able to fulfill that role for them.
Right.
And so, I do see myself becoming more connected with the community and wanting to share what I can with the community, but also help collaborate as well.
Yep.
And to help pull in and just connect with whānau.
Yeah,
on that
right.
level. Because I think it's needed.
Yeah, and you did right. So we had a quick chat before this about a person that we both know. Sounds like you're really close with him as well, Dion. Dion Rangiuia. So How did you meet? Was this like a crossing over or doing a similar type of work?
Yeah, well, I mean, when I got on the spiritual journey early on, I felt like I needed to reach out to anyone in the healing space.
Right.
And the most common name that kept coming up for me was this Māori fella called Dion. And so I reached out to him, and he's a busy man.
Yeah.
He's very busy. And although the the timeline didn't align for us to meet.
Yeah.
We communicated via socials and stuff like that. And I get it, being in this field now, how busy you get and how, you're just leaning into what's calling your attention at the time. But there's so much in this field of work to be done. And then it just so happened that divine timing that we really connected on a deeper level, I suppose, this year.
Yeah.
And just communicated a lot more and got to meet each other in person. And just after going through what journey I've had and understanding how much is involved with holding space and healing and going through that journey yourself and then helping others, I've had a lot more respect on what the bro does and being able to hear his story and what he's been doing in the community and what work he's continuing to do and how he's really leaning into his intuition to know when he's been called in other parts of the, well, I'll say world, but even, in New Zealand as well. So beautiful brother, got a lot of respect for him. Shout out there on as well.
Awesome.
All your work you've done in Tahuna and
Yeah. So, do you feel like you've already followed a similar path in that you get a calling to go somewhere, or is that still like a heady decision to make about where you're going, or do you truly follow, where the feeling takes you?
Yeah, I'm all the feels. I'm all the feels. Yeah, I'm all the feels. And look, it's part of our humanism to have to manage that mind as well. Like the bros that have known me for so long, like, oh, when do you get to the bliss phase when everything just aligns and you're just happy? Like, man, you're going to deal with like struggles, frustrations, all our humanism, you know what I mean? And you're going to struggle with head and heart at some points depending on where you're at.
Yeah.
But this is why I try to have non-negotiables in my life. And, getting up, meditating, getting in cold water, the lake, ice baths, because these are what help dissolve away the mind to allow us to sit more in the heart. And when we're in the heart, this is where our intuition is amplified, so we never have to second guess that intuition. So when I make big decisions, I really take a bit of time to prepare myself to drop into breath work myself, and to use plant medicine like cacao and stuff like that to be able to activate the heart space, and just other modalities and techniques to be able to allow me to be in full alignment to receive what it feels like I'm meant to be doing.
Wow.
And then once that feeling comes through, and you better be prepared, because some of those decisions might be uprooting your life and
your
moving,
whole life.
then I'm in there. That's the full commitment I've got to my journey in this lifetime. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, man, that's inspiring. It really is. Because, too many of us sit in our comfort bubble and we don't like stepping outside of it. But, and we use our head to make these decisions, right? When really we have this feeling that I think I'd be happier doing something else. But our head says, well, you need to earn money and you've got to pay the rent and you've got all these modern world things that sort of keep you anchored in these bubbles. So, I think it's inspiring that you can put out a message there to say it's okay to uproot and go somewhere else if that's where your calling is, Yeah. Now, I just want to touch on one other point too. Is Dion was quite a big loss to our community. When he moved on. So I know a lot of people. I never received any of his healing because I'm in that kind of logical, heady space still. But certainly my wife has been to him, and she just raves about the stuff that he was doing and saying and the effects that that spiritual healing was having on her. So I think the community felt quite a big loss when he left, and it's almost serendipitous that you've appeared on the scene, bro. Don't you think?
Yeah.
It's I'm really surprised to hear your story, and I'm like, oh my God, like Dion leaves, and we have this other like awesome guy with his story and with his with all your experiences and everything you've talked about from the spiritual level. I think certainly people in this region are, as you say, they're waiting for it. They're open to it. So do you find that I think you answered this question already, but do you find you have to sell what you do?
There is an element, depending, it all depends how you, what your vision is for your company, for any business, and it's a tricky one too, because once you get into something you're passionate about, you can't be too fully in the passion without understanding that there's a business aspect.
It's still a business, right?
So there's a juggle with that too. But so for me, it all depends on your vision, on where you want to take the company, on how much, I suppose, you're going to build framework around how you promote, if that makes sense. So for me, it was a little bit of selling involved, but then it's about just seeing what works and what doesn't. And what I've realised is there's real power in just showing up and doing the work. You know, if you're passionate about what you do, and I made a firm belief at the start when I created this that I will turn up for one person the same way I turn up for 1,000 or 100. And it's kept me humble on that too. Because there's times that I've promoted the heck out of things, and then there's 6 people that turn up, or there's a lot of people that pull out, and then it's kind of making you feel, oh, gee, is it the right thing? And you have all these fears come in, but this is why the practices is so important, because it keeps you grounded and in alignment and in your heart space or in your intuition to know that whoever turns up in these events are meant for that medicine.
Absolutely.
And like I said, I'll turn up for one the same way I'll turn up for 100 people. And so for me, I have had times when I've had to sell it, but what I've noticed in the last 3 months is a really big shift in the landscape of people being receptive to holistic modalities and holistic medicine. So what used to be a bit woo-woo and a bit like, a bit full of what. A lot more people are like, I've heard about this on a podcast or heard on Joe Rogan that they're doing, which is great. He's a great bridge for connecting a lot of trade people too into more holistic stuff. And so there's like a bridging together of that gap where it's now almost normalized to speak about breath work and, spiritual stuff. And so we're starting to see a shift. We're about a good 2-3 years behind Australia, but I know Australia are really running with, huge events with breath work and sound healing and everything else as well. Big retreats, wellness retreats and plant medicine retreats. Like, they're doing some really big work over there. And I always knew over the last year or two that we would be in a position where we're starting to, be a lot more receptive here in New Zealand as well. And I think we're on the brink of that right now.
That's fantastic. Well, I have to say that just in the short chat, it's become obvious that you'd be one of the better vehicles for doing that, because you've lived it. Like, you've come through that trauma place, and you've come through and you've received the healing, and you're in a better place now. So I think, it's important for me anyway, as a consumer of stuff. It's important that the message that's been given out there, if someone's trying to sell me, it's easier to follow someone who's had to go through that whole thing themselves. So now we're about to wrap up our kōrero. It's been a great chat. Really enjoyed it. And so what I'm just going to give you one quick fire question. I'll be interested to know your answer to this one, because it's given your experience that there could be a lot of different angles to the answer. If you could go back in time and give advice to your 18-year-old self, what would that advice be?
The 18-year-old one wouldn't be quite receptive to probably with what I'd say to myself, but I think it even goes back further, a bit younger, to my younger self, would be to know that you are loved, that you are safe, and that everything will work out. Nice. If I got that advice and could say that to myself, which I have in a child journey as well, being able to say that, and then that would be hugely powerful for me to know that life would be okay. Nice. Yeah. Nice one.
So very important question now is, if anyone wanted to get a hold of you, what is the easiest way to contact you?
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, the easiest way these days, and I've had a tough relationship with socials, but it seems to be Instagram. Seems to be the gram, where you can find Holistic Performance, and the tag is just at Holistic Performance _ and you'll see my face on there and see what we do. And we've got an amazing event on this weekend as well. On Saturday, it includes plant medicine, cacao, breathwork, and sound healing with tonga puhoro as well. So we're holding that from 2 to 4 at the OC Health Clubs here in 5 Mile. And that's also where my studio and clinic is in there as well, my centre.
Fantastic.
So get amongst it, whānau. Get amongst it. Feeling the calling.
Yeah.
And, otherwise, follow me on socials. And we're about to launch a lot more community events, which will be free to community, breathing Taha down at the lake. And we're about to launch our brotherhood, our conscious brotherhood as well, where we're specifically dealing with men and helping men navigate their emotions and
Great.
potentially their traumas. So,
fantastic. Dion's been trying to encourage me he was encouraging me to go to his men's event too. I forget the name of it. It could be time. It could be time for me to. I've got some free time these days. Actually, it's more. I was time poor. Was my main reason previously. So anyway, any last comments before we wrap up?
No, just ultimately to know that don't take life too serious and still have, the journey can be a tough one, but to know that, to try and live with love and laughter and, with joy as much as we can. Just connecting with your people, find your people, and you'll find that by, it'll reveal itself when you do the inward work as well.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say is that we all have the capabilities and power to know that we can self-navigate and self-regulate anything, and to stop looking externally for the answers, and the answers are within.
Great. Thank you so much. Great advice, and nō reira, e mihi atu nei ki a koe. Thank you so much for our chat today. I've really enjoyed it. It always opens my mind to talk about spiritual things. I'm not the most spiritual person, but I'm always happy to discuss it and try and get my head around it. It's one of the problems that I face with it. So anyway, e te iwi, if you have any questions at all for Kyle, if you have any comments to make, pop them down in the comments section here. Remember to like the channel and subscribe to it, and we'll see you next time on The Chew. Mā te wā.